What's up, peeps? Today I'm making over the shop stool that I purchased during last week's Thrift with Me video. Plus, I'm starting the makeover of the brush drying shelf that I picked up during that very same outing. So if you're into thrift flips and furniture makeovers, then stick around and let's get started. First things first, I removed the price sticker, and I was pretty psyched to have picked this up for under $5. It's sturdy and stable and in perfect shape. It's just a little dated and in definite need of a refresh. I used a degreasing dish soap with warm water and a microfiber rag to thoroughly clean the piece. While I was in cleaning mode, I took care of the drying rack too. The top had a pretty thick layer of gunk on it, so I scraped it first with a Japan scraper, and then I grabbed a stiff wire brush to finish it off. The wire brush worked out great. The wire brush removed pretty much everything, and I vacuumed up the debris. Then I used some warm, clean water to wipe off any soap or other residue from the entire shelf. To get the whole thing clean though, I wanted to remove the hooks too, and there were just some Phillips head screws holding them in from the back. Easy breezy. The stool dried and I got to sanding. I used a 100 grit sanding screen and my orbital to remove the finish from the seat. That didn't take very long. The legs only needed a scuff sand with a 220 grit, and I did all of that by hand. I used a rag and just water to wipe down the sanding dust from the whole stool. Then I got back to the shelf and I sanded that down using a 220 grit with my Black & Decker mouse sander. And again, using just water and a clean rag, I wiped down all the sanding dust. I'll let this dry. That's good. Next up, I'm gonna actually fill in this knot. I think just that knot, because I don't think there's anything else really on here that's kind of a mess. But that has a little depression in it, and I don't want it catching gunk. So I'm going to fill that with some wood fill, and yeah, after this dries. But I started with the stool because it was already dry. I'm using my Ace brand wood filler in the color Natural. It dries pretty quickly and holds up really well. There weren't many spots that needed fill. I added some to the legs and stretchers and left it to dry completely. The shelf was totally dry and ready for wood fill by this point too, and because I live in Phoenix, the wood fill didn't take very long to dry either.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And with that dry, I could sand the wood filler, vacuum, wipe things down, and add a coat of Boss from Dixie Belle paints in gray. Then I left the shelf to finish up on another day. In fact, I'll finish this next week during the Save the Planet collab hosted by Marissa, aka Miss Flips. I'm giving the shelf a grungy, earth-friendly makeover, and I'm also adding faux tumbled tile to my garage backsplash. You are not going to want to miss it. But for now, I'm getting back to finishing up this workshop stool, starting with sanding all of the wood fill with a 220 grit. Vacuuming the loose dust, then wiping everything down with water. I left it to dry for about an hour, then got a coat of Boss on the base of the stool. I used a synthetic angled purdy brush and started with the stool upside down to make sure I didn't miss any spots. I flipped it over, but I did the second filler coat off camera. While the base dried, I added a coat of folk art wood tint in the color gray. I did 3 coats in total, sanding between each with a fine grit rad pad. This has a built-in sealer, but I brought it inside and added some extra protection with Varathane poly in satin, and I left that to dry overnight. The next day, after taping off the seat off camera, I added a coat of folk art chalk paint in the color nautical. I did this inside the house too because it's just getting entirely too hot to work in my garage past 9 a.m. these days. So if you like indoor projects, then you'll want to subscribe. I've got all kinds of fun videos coming up for this entire summer. More updates on our bedroom makeover, plus our bathroom makeover too, not to mention a cool upcycled art piece for our bedroom. Plus, I'm faux finishing my front door, and I'll have a few nice furniture makeovers tucked in too. This second coat almost covered everything, but I did do a third spot coat off camera and left everything to dry overnight. But once the paint had some time to dry, I pulled the tape and then flipped the stool over so I could add a second coat of Varathane top coat. I ended up doing 3 total coats on the seat, and I sanded between each with a fine grit sanding sponge. But I did all that off camera. Then all I had left to do was add a coat of folk art wax to the legs, and my new shop stool was done. Thanks so much for being here and watching today. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the Save the Planet Eco Collab next week, where I'm finishing off that shelf from today's video. But that's all I've got for today. Hang in for the beauty shots. Later, peeps! Neighbors and their landscapers. That's what my channel should have been called. Can she film before they go out to cut the leaves? And whatever other crap is going on out there. And the answer is usually no. No, I cannot.